stations. Today we shall be discussing about recent advances. The topic is sleep. We are very fortunate to have two eminent speakers among us, that is Dr. Dhanraj GA from Bangalore and Dr. Vikas Agrawal from Mumbai. Now let me introduce Dr. Dhanraj sir to you. Dr. Dhanraj sir is a senior consultant at Bangalore at Anaya Healthcare and Trustful Group of Hospitals. He has done his MBBS from Kolar Medical College, Karnataka, MS ENT from JNMC Belgaum, done his fellowship from Municipal Hospital Mumbai, and has served as a secretary of Karnataka Medical Association. His area of interest are sleep, ear surgery, endoscopic sinus surgery, and vertigo. Thank you so much, sir, for guiding us today. Now,
Thank
sir,
you.
you can start with your presentation. Over to you,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Harshita. So, hello everyone. So we will directly start with this the topic of obstructive sleep apnea. Now, without wasting much of the time, I'll jump into the topic directly. Now, when it comes to obstructive sleep apnea, first thing what everybody would expect is to know what is snoring. This is one of the basic thing. Now, snoring is a sound which is generated by the vibration of pharyngeal soft tissues and which is caused by obstruction in the upper airway. Okay, so it's basically a sound. It is caused due to loose pharyngeal soft tissues and which is happening because of the obstruction in the upper airway. So it includes, the definition should include three things: sound, vibration of the tissues, and obstruction in the upper airway. So usually this snoring is louder during inspiration than expiration. Okay, now these are few things, fine. Now, before getting into the actual obstructive sleep apnea, everyone should know there are actually about 64 types of sleep disorders. But for ENT, what we are concerned is more about one disorder, that is obstructive sleep apnea. There are many other things like sleep hyperventilation, central sleep apnea, narcolepsy, cataplexy, which is more of a neurological syndromes. So what we need to know is more about obstructive sleep apnea. I will not get into detail of this, but sometime in your examinations, if this slide is projected, what we need to know is, what the examiner would want you to know is, a normal sleep cycle will have different stages of sleep. That is REM sleep, that is rapid eye movement, and stage 1, 2, 3, 4 of NREM sleeps. So what we need to, so the most important thing is REM sleep here, where we concentrate more. The REM sleep, initially the duration is shorter, if you can see, then later on it widens. So this is one important thing, and during awakening again it shortens. So in a normal sleep, there will be about 8 to 9 cycles of this kind of a, in one 7 hours of sleep, there will be about 8 to 9 cycles of such kind of sleep cycles. Okay, so yes, now when it comes to the pathological part of it, apnea is one term which all of us should know. Again, when I talk about definition, I will actually put 2-3 things what actually the definition should incorporate in that. Now, apnea means, first thing, it is a cessation of airflow where at the nose or mouth for what period? Period of at least 10 seconds. So the activity cessation of airflow, the place is the nose or the mouth, and for duration of at least 10 seconds. Okay. So it may be either obstructive apnea or a central in origin, that whatever it is. Now, index means number of such episodes, a number of apneas per hour is the apnea index. Okay. Now, similarly, hypopnea, what is it? Again, what is the activity? The reduction of airflow, which is more than or equal to 30%. For what duration? At least 10 seconds, same thing. Here, one extra thing is the saturation should drop down by either more or equal to 4%. The oxyhemoglobin saturation should drop down by 4%. Okay. So this is what is hypopnea. Or there's one more new definition for this, wherein it says there is a hypopnea is nothing but reduction in the airflow more than or equal to 50% for at least 10 seconds with more than or equal to 3% desaturation. Or main thing is this, an EEG arousal. Okay, this is a new definition wherein it incorporates the reduction in airflow for at least 10 seconds, saturation dip by more than or equal to 3%, but it also incorporates one more terminology, that is arousal. Okay, so apnea hypopnea index. So the moment the earlier definition was apnea hypopnea index is number of apneas plus hypopnea per hour of sleep. Okay, so if an examiner asks you this question, what is AHI? What you're supposed to say is apnea hypopnea index is the number of apneas and hypopneas per hour of sleep. Okay, now if he says only so much, then please answer this part also. It is based on at least minimum 2 hours of sleep. Okay, so that is most important. What is, again, see, now these definitions keep on changing every now and then. So the newer part is apnea hypopnea index is not that much relevant nowadays. There's a new index which is coming, which is called as respiratory disturbance index. It is nothing but it incorporates the same thing, apnea, hypopnea. It also incorporates one more entity, which is arousal. So number of apneas, hypopneas and arousals per hour of sleep is called as respiratory disturbance index. Okay, now what we deal is what we need to know, I mean, what today what we are going to talk more is about obstructive sleep apnea. Now, obstructive sleep apnea means it is again the same thing. It is cessation of airflow which leads to snoring. Now, one big terminology which is, apnea hypopnea index, normally less than 5 is taken as normal, but very important is there is a again the definitions keep changing. Initially it was said that AHI of more than 5 is taken as obstructive sleep apnea, and which is classified as mild, moderate and severe. Like 5 to 15 is mild, moderate, 15 to 30 is moderate, and more than 30 is severe. But now the recent classification is it is not again apnea and hypopnea. It is considered as 5 to 15 events per hour. That is, what is this events? Events again includes 3 things: apnea, hypopnea and arousals, which is called as RERAs. Okay, so it includes apnea, hypopnea and arousals. Fine. Now, OSAs, we talked about OSA now. So one more word needs to be, one more word is added here, which is called as OSAs, that is syndrome. So when do we call it as a syndrome? OSAs is diagnosed when AHI is more than 15 actually. It is more than 15 and the patient has both daytime and nighttime symptoms. What are the symptoms? Like daytime, nighttime snoring, choking episodes, gasping, breath holdings, or daytime sleepiness, decrease in work efficiency. So syndrome should incorporate not only the AHI, it also should it also incorporates these symptoms. Okay, so now most important is when a patient comes to you, if uh, how do you take the history? Now if the question is asked to you, the first thing what the examiner or what we would want to you to know is, if you say I would like to take the history along with the patient's partner or spouse, then you have already scored 2 marks. So first thing is patient and the spouse or partner should be there during history taking. Okay. Now, second thing is I would want to ask the patient certain things and I would want to ask the spouse certain things. If you say so, remaining 2 marks have been already scored. Now, what do you want to ask the patients? You would actually, patient would know whatever he's experiencing when he's in awake state. When he is in sleeping state, he would not know much about the episodes which would be happening. So you will be asking the patient more about the snoring, sudden wake-ups, daytime sleepiness, whether he's feeling dry throat, early morning when he wakes up, does he have headaches? How is he at the work? Is his efficiency coming down? Is he having difficulty in waking up in the morning? Is he having nocturnal enuresis? So all these things you would be asking the patient. Now, what would you ask the spouse? You would ask the spouse, does he or she snores? Does he wake up? Or does he have choking episodes like apneic breathless? Like, does he have that? Does he have halitosis? Does he feel tired? Does he get agitated during day hours? Does he have depression? All these things you would be asking the spouse or the partner. So when it comes to history taking, first thing is you should take the history along with the partner. Second thing, you need to differentiate the history from the elicit different type of history from the patient, different type of history from the partner. So if this much is done, I think you scored the full marks. Now, the next thing is physical examination. Now, again here, the moment it comes to an examination part, we classify here into two things. One is the general examination and the other one is specific examinations. Now, general examinations would involve the vital signs, like you measure the pulse, BP, and vital signs. You measure the height and weight of the patient and calculate the body mass index. You would also take a neck circumference, usually a neck circumference of more than 40 to 43 centimeters is considered significant in snoring and sleep apnea. So classify your examination part into general, wherein you would be seeing all these things. When it comes to specific, divide it into external and internal examination. External examination, the look of the face. You look for some facial architectural deformities like retrognathia, micrognathias, uh, uh, the chin protrusions, the different types of facial architectures which you would look in for. And when it comes to internal examination, actually you would be, okay, sorry, I think slides are missed. Okay. When you come into internal examination, you would actually start from the nose till the larynx. Okay. Any obstruction which is there. Now, again, when it comes to internal examination, examination part, you will be seeing only the static obstructions when you're examining the patient in an awake state. Static obstruction means in the nose, you would be looking for some septal deviations, some turbinate hypertrophies, some polyps, concha bullosa. When it comes to nasopharynx, adenoids or some other nasopharyngeal mass. When it comes to oropharynx, you would actually look at the soft palate, the uvula, tonsillar hypertrophies, macroglacias. Then as you go down, base of the tongue, especially lingual tonsils, in some cases can lead into snoring, lateral pharyngeal bands, all these things, and the type of epiglottis, all these things would involve in your examination part. Okay, so examination, to sum up, one is general examination and the specific examination. In specific examination, you would again classify into external and internal examinations. Okay, external facial architectures and internal from nose till the larynx, what all the static obstructions you find. So if you answer so much, you're done with the question. I don't think you you would have lose any marks in this. Okay, now investigations. Now each investigations has something to say about it. Now, of course, complete blood count. When we just mention about a complete blood count, somebody would ask, what is? what are we looking at in complete blood count? In severe snoring people, sometimes we also look at increased RBC counts. It may or may not have so much of significance, but if that entity is there, then it signifies severe obstructive sleep apnea. Now, thyroid function tests, we all know hypothyroidism can cause snoring. So thyroid function test needs to be done. Sugar levels, why? Because obstructive sleep apnea, severe OSA people will have uncontrolled sugars, uncontrolled blood pressure. Lipid profile to check for the obesity. Vitamin B12, very, very important, because see, vitamin B12 is the one which is responsible for the nerve sheath regenerations. And we all know neuromuscular incoordination can lead to snoring and obstructive sleep apnea. So vitamin B12 deficiencies also have shown significant, which says that it plays a significant role in causing obstructive sleep apnea. Polysomnography, yes, we will come to that in a little while from now. DICE and dynamic MRI. So I think this forms the investigation part of snoring and obstructive sleep apnea. Few entities which the examiners would expect you to know is this Muller's maneuver. Now, honestly, let us how much significance all these things has is immaterial. Now, if a question is asked, you need to know about this. What is Muller's maneuver? It's a reverse Valsalva maneuver. When performing a fiber optic endoscopy, visualizing the pharynx. So what happens at the end of expiration, if the patient inspires with a closed mouth and nose, there will be collapse of airway. Okay, so this maneuver is called as Muller's maneuver, and you can visualize it with the fiber optic endoscope. Okay, so this part you have to know. So it is, the main thing is at the end of expiration, if you ask the patient to inspire with the closed nose and the mouth, the collapse of the airway structures. Okay, now, yeah, there are multiple scales which has been mentioned. So again, you need to know about this. So how much it is relevant is all secondary. Now you need to know about the Epworth sleepiness scale. So there are few situations which is given to the patient, and he's asked to score, and ultimately a PERT score less than 10 is considered as normal. So this is questionnaires which has to be given to your patients at the outpatient. Stop bank questionnaire is one more questionnaire, so which this is to assess the severity of the symptoms what the patient is facing. Now, most importantly, in all the textbooks, probably it is mentioned that polysomnogram is a gold standard investigation to diagnose or to detect obstructive sleep apnea. Now, I want all of you to listen to this carefully. Now, you have come up with you will be asked this question, and there are 3 examiners sitting in front of you. The first thing what I would also ask you people to know is 3 examiners. Just first initially try to read the face of an examiner. Each examiner would want to know different things from you. So see, for me now, if you ask me polysomnogram, is it relevant? I would say yes, only when it is done properly. So for me, polysomnogram is an investigation to know the severity of OSA, nothing else. It will guide us to tell us to know about the severity of OSA. It is not going to tell anything about other things. Okay, it is not going to guide us in treatment or any other aspects. But for some other examiner, he would be wanting to know, polysomnogram is a gold standard investigation. So that gold standard word is what he would be expecting from your mouth. So there are different examiners who would be wanting. So what I want you to say is, if this question is posed to you, polysomnogram is a gold standard investigation to assess the severity of obstructive sleep apnea. So you have covered that gold standard word, and you have also answered the severity of OSA. Okay. Now, okay, when it comes to, see, there are different types of polysomnograms. Okay, we'll come to the types of polysomnograms a little later. Now, what is a standard polysomnogram would be okay. What do you want to look at? So if you ask me, if I give you just a numerical report of a polysomnogram, then actually my question is wrong. I actually have to give you a raw data of a polysomnogram and then ask you to assess for the severity. Now, in this, if this picture is given to you, now what all you should know is, see, look at the airflow here. Airflow, the cessation of airflow is considered as apnea. Cessation of airflow is considered as apnea. Okay, that is one thing. Now, one more thing, what you need to know is, during this apnea, see, look at the saturations. See, it is dipping down. Okay, so at the peak of apnea, the saturation is totally down. Fine. So apnea correlating with the desaturations, and also you can look at the abdominal effort. Okay, so these are the entities which needs to be looked at. So if the, why I'm asking you this, why I'm wanting to tell you that this should be very carefully noted is, see, for example, a AHI, if I say a AHI of 40, a patient with a AHI of 40, is it a severe obstructive sleep apnea? Then you would say yes, based on the classification. Now, if that in that AHI, if there are about 38 hypapneas, only 2 apneas, okay, so is that severe? Or a AHI which shows 17 per hour, wherein apneas are 15 and hypapnea is only 2. So whether 17 is significant, AHI of 38 is significant. Actually, if you look at a raw data, number of apneas are more in AHI 17. So AHI 17 is the more severe one compared to that AHI 38. Okay, so to know the severity, actually the study of a raw data is which is very important, and it is not the numerical report. Fine. Now, yes, what all we look at in a polysomnogram, we need to look at is, one is the brain activity, which is told us by EEG, the muscular activity, which is told by electrocardiograph, EMG, EMG of at different levels, chin EMG and leg EMG will be there. Heart rate is told by electrocardiogram, oxygen saturations, air flows, thoracic and abdominal movement. All these entities are recorded in a polysomnogram. All these things are important. Okay, so the report also should address these things: sleep latency, sleep efficiency, respiratory disturbance index. More than AHI, it is respiratory disturbance index. Sleep architecture should be known. Effect of position on respiratory. Now, more than that, types of respiratory disturbances needs to be known. Okay, so these are the entities which has to be incorporated in a polysomnogram. Then only you can report a proper polysomnogram. Now, there are different levels of polysomnograms. Actually, there are about 3 to 4 types or levels of polysomnogram. It was said that level 1 is a laboratory polysomnogram, but actually nowadays most of the hospitals incorporate a level 1 study. What is that level 1 study? Actually, it tells us about 4 things. It tells us about airflow. It tells us about brain activity, that is told by EEG, the muscular activity, cardiac activity, and the saturation. So 5 things it says us, but there are 7 signals wherein the muscular activity is known by these 3 things: electrocardiogram, chin EMG, and the leg EMG. And the remaining 4 is EEG, tells us about the brain activity and the airflow and the oxygen saturation. So when this level 1 study is nothing but which tells us about all these things, and it should be it's an attended sleep study. That means the trained personnel will be attending the study. When the same study is done in a home setting, that is called as type 2. Now type 3 is again the EEG activity, the brain activity and the muscular activity is being taken out in this. It gives us information about the airflow, saturation, and the cardiac activity. Only these 3 things. So now if you ask me, type 3, is it enough? Yes, type 3 is enough to diagnose an obstructive sleep apnea, but type 3 is not enough to tell us about the severity of OSA. As I told you before, polysomnogram is done to know the severity of obstructive sleep apnea. It is not for diagnosing an obstructive sleep apnea. So actually, if you want to do a polysomnogram, it should be actually level 1. Fine. Now you basically, okay, what that's a different thing, but what you need to know is what is level 1, level 2, level 3. Fine. Okay. These terminologies are there: full night sleep study, split night sleep study. Full night sleep study is the polysomnogram done overnight. Split night is if in the 8 hours of sleep, first 4 hours of polysomnogram is being done. Next 4 hours, it is CPAP titrated polysomnogram is done. So that is called as split night sleep study. You need to know these terminologies, that's all. Now, I think I will. Dynamic MRI was supposed to be spoken by Vikas, and but I think I will just.
No, you only go ahead. Dynamic MRI I did not do.
Yes. Yeah, yesterday Pratik told me, Vikas,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'll just make few.
Please go ahead with dynamic MRI.
Yeah. Now, dynamic MRI. it's an investigation to know the level of obstruction, at what level the obstruction is happening. Now, please do not compare it with drug-induced sleep endoscopy. Now, there are many advantages and disadvantages with a dynamic MRI. Now, it will tell us actually the anatomical site of obstruction, whether it is a palatal, whether it's a oropharyngeal, or it is a base stem. But, and one more advantage is it is not, the sleep here is not drug induced. Okay. Now, disadvantages, if I go on quoting, there are many. Why? It will not tell you about the severity. It does not give you, actually in DICE, it gives you a proper dimensions. But in dynamic MRI, it doesn't give you the proper dimensions of the anatomical structures. One more disadvantage is MRI in some people is, some people with claustrophobia, they have a difficulty in sleeping in that MRI chamber. So that is one disadvantage. The other disadvantage is, sometimes this dynamic MRIs may have to be repeated twice or thrice, because patient may not sleep at that particular time when they go to MRI. So all in all, what I would want to say is, to know the anatomical site of obstruction, dynamic MRI is good, but actually it will not give you a proper dimensions at the site of obstruction, which is given by a drug-induced sleep endoscopy. Okay. Yes. I will not take much time now. Time is running out. So, okay. CPAP and BiPAP. Now, whenever there is. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Because.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Now, whenever there is an obstruction in an upper airway, and the obstruction is more of a dynamic obstruction, not much of a static obstruction is there, CPAP is a wonderful device. But in presence of static obstructions, if you are giving a CPAP, then it will not work to its efficiency. So selection of patients to give CPAP is more important. What is CPAP? Continuous positive airway pressure. Okay. Now, I would not go into details of telling, comparing the CPAP with the surgical methods. So, CPAP is a non-invasive one. Everyone knows, small, portable, quieter. Nowadays, very quiet CPAPs have come. So, when this positive air pressure is given, patient goes into a good sleep. But only disadvantages are, the masks which has to be worn, and the pressures which the patient has to take. There will be a lot of discomfort the patients would be feeling. So dry throat, soreness in the throat. All those. It's very difficult and cumbersome to wear this CPAP. But in a complete dynamic obstruction, CPAP works wonderfully. I'll just make a mention of a BiPAP also. Now, what is BiPAP? It delivers higher pressures both during inspiration and lower pressures during. It sends in high pressures during inspiration and low pressures during expirations. Okay. Usually, BiPAPs comes into picture when there is a severe OSA, when there is underlying comorbidities of the lungs, then BiPAP comes into picture. So, okay, CPAP nowadays, initially there were manual CPAPs. Nowadays we have auto titrating CPAPs. That is what is used in sleep night sleep studies. I think I would end with this. If I have any questions, I would take it. Or I think Vikas is waiting for.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I call upon Dr.
Pratik? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir,
Pratik?
can you please?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, can you please show us the video of dynamic MRI, sir, once again?
Okay. 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 Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is a video of a dynamic MRI. See, if you see here, can you see this? It gives you, there is an obstruction at this level, hypopharyngeal level. It tells you about the level of obstruction, but you won't get a clear picture of the dimensions of the structures obstructing there.
Yes, sir.
So when you are opting for a surgical method, probably dynamic MRI will not give us much information. So that is one disadvantage.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on our platform, sir. So Dr. Harshita will take over, sir.
Now I welcome Dr. Vikas Agrawal, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, hi.
He is
Thanks.
Hi, sir. He is a MS ENT, FCPS, and many more degrees to be attached. Currently, he is Director of Specialty of ENT Hospital, Chairman Committee for Sleep Disorders of Indian Academy of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery, and has been interim past President of Indian Association of Surgeons for Sleep Apnea. He has pioneered in area of sleep. He has set up the sleep disorder guidelines, established various techniques, which
It's
includes
okay. Why are you? It's
no, sir. Smell technique, dice, robotic surgery, three-cut technique for medialization, dynamic laryngeal surgery. And he has also taken India on an international platform by demonstrating robotic tongue-based surgery at an international level and invited as a faculty at international and national level. Uh, his special area of interest is snoring and obstructive sleep apnea, coblation technology, functional endoscopic sinus surgery, and professional voice. Apart from this, one which many people don't know about sir is an awesome singer and a very humble person to be.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have met
Every
in
year
person.
we hear him singing. This time, because of COVID, we missed that opportunity.
And to hear Vikas sir live
in
is
fact, in
one of
fact,
the
in fact, in this lockdown, I'm pursuing my music because there's
yes
nothing else
sir.
to do.
Yes, sir. I've seen the webinar in which you were singing. I had seen that. So it
In
is
fact, day after tomorrow, Dr. Sethi, Dharamir Sethi
yes,
from
sir.
Singapore, we are having a closed, music session. He is a fan. तो अभी हमारे ग्रुप में वही सब बात चल रही है.
So, sir, to hear sir live is an opportunity. Thank you, sir, for coming here and guiding us on such an important and evolving topic. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Now, over to you, sir.
Dhanraj, can you just stop sharing the screen?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you stop sharing your screen?
How do I?
Sir, you have to stop
Stop.
share, sir.
You have to go to stop share at the lower part. Yeah. It's come. So at the outset, my sincere thanks to Pratik, Harshita, and the whole team of this DNB, whatever mentors, for asking me to come here. But honestly, I'm not into classical teaching of students for exam purpose. I am always a believer in knowing the subject, and exam is just a event. But fine, this is related to exam. So I have a lot of things with me. You ask me what you want to see, what you want from me, and I have not prepared any presentation. I will pull out my presentations and slides, whatever you say. I was actually just doing something else. I'm busy in some other meeting, but
Yes.
so you ask me what all you want me to do.
Sir, you can show us the video of DICE and you can explain how we can identify that this particular video is drug-induced sleep endoscopy. What is the procedure, how to do it, and
Okay.
what are the findings, and what medications can we use for DICE also.
Okay. So
And
let me pull out this one, dice in South Indian population. Are you able to see my screen?
yes, sir.
Okay, so as Dhanraj was just saying that once you have done a sleep study and you know that this patient is mild, moderate, severe, depending on the number of apneas and hypopneas and all those things, then you need to either treat the patient by using a CPAP. CPAP will give you pressure, air will go under pressure and open up the entire pathway of air. In that case, you have obstruction in the nose, which we call static obstruction. And then we have obstruction in the throat, which we call dynamic obstruction. So nose is very easy to identify. You do a CT scan and you see whether there is a deviated septum, turbinate hypertrophy, adenoid, and whatnot. Question arises that in the throat, where is the obstruction? Is the obstruction at the soft palate level? Is the obstruction at the base of the tongue level, at epiglottis level? So how do you identify? So if you're seeing a patient, if you're doing a scopy during awake stage, obviously you're not going to see a collapse because the patient is awake. He's not snoring. He's not into sleep apnea. So therefore, you need to perform something called drug-induced sleep endoscopy. So you have to see the patient under sleep. Now, how do you make the patient to go under sleep if you do not give him medicines? So therefore, you have to give some drugs. Therefore, it's called drug-induced sleep endoscopy. Easy. You are doing endoscopy under sleep, so we call it drug-induced sleep endoscopy. Now, I'm just playing this video. Sorry. I don't know why this video is stuck. Okay. Are you able to see the video playing now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is the septum. You see the septal spur on one side, and you see this patient. There's a strip on his forehead. So you can see that the patient is lying in supine position with a strip on the head. What is that strip? This is called BIS monitoring, bispectral index monitoring. So what is bispectral index monitoring? You have to make sure that the patient is not over sedated. If you give too much of medicines, every person will start snoring, every person will collapse. So therefore, you have to measure how much of sedation is given. And how do you measure that? By measuring the brain waves. You can do a full EEG, electroencephalogram, as you do in your sleep study, right? But that's too cumbersome to even learn about alpha, theta, and beta waves. At this stage, I do not know the details about alpha, theta, and beta waves. So this strip does, bispectral index, this is actually an aesthetic machine. The anesthetists use it to know the severity of, the depth of anesthesia. So this gives you a numerical in, one sec. Actually, okay. So this gives you a numerical here, right? I believe I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So this number 72, what you're seeing now, so this is the number that, say, base is going here. So that strip is giving this number. So 0 means there's no brain activity, patient is dead. 100 is a normal brain activity. That means the patient is completely awake. So between 60 to 80 or 50 to 70 is the range where you want your base to be for perfect sedation, but not anesthesia. Less than 50 is anesthesia, right? So we generally try to keep it between 60 to 80. So this is about BIS monitoring. So this patient, you put the BIS if available, and then you put a scope, a thin flexible scope through the nose of the patient, and then you start giving medicine. So what medicines do you give? Earlier we used to give propofol only. Most of the studies were done with propofol, but the problem with propofol is that if you give little more dose of propofol, every patient will go into anesthesia because it's an anesthetic agent. So if you give propofol in a very small dose, then it will be not anesthetic but sedative. So propofol, the knee is very steep. That means the patient is sedated and suddenly the patient will go into anesthesia. Therefore, then people started giving midazolam. Of late, dexmedetomidine, Dexmed or Dexim or whatever you want to call it, dexmedetomidine is the drug of choice in many of the places because with this, the patient will be only sedated. The patient will never go into anesthesia. So this will mimic the sleep most closely. So you give this medicine, and if required, you can give some midazolam, some propofol also to supplement. But our mainstay now is dexmedetomidine. However, your examiners may still know about propofol. So you say that propofol is the usual drug, but nowadays dexmedetomidine is preferred. You can say it that way, or even if you say propofol, most of the places it will be considered right. And this is the score, and then you monitor what is going on, and then you see what is sorry, let me. So CT scan is for static obstruction, as I was saying, and then you see in the nasopharynx to start with what is happening. Now this patient, as you can see, the patient, once the patient starts snoring, his breathing is becoming more and more shallow, and gradually this is the nasopharynx. So what you see here, this is the top of the tonsil, this is the salpingopharyngeal fold, and this is the soft palate. So this is how gradually the patient will get into hypopnea. You were hearing from Dhanraj what is hypopnea, what is apnea. So this is hypopnea. The airway is not fully open, it is half open or less open, and gradually the airway will completely close, and that will form apnea. So right now, this is a stage of hypopnea. That means less ventilation. So till 30-40% we call it hypopnea. Unfortunately, I cannot scroll. I don't know what is the problem here. So I'll have to wait for this to. Okay. Okay. Now see that now this is getting into complete apnea. You see that now there's no air going in. Are you able to see that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is apnea. So what physicians speak, we are actually seeing here. We see what is happening inside. What was hypopnea? What is apnea? Now, as Dhanraj said, that apnea is more dangerous because the patient is not breathing, and then then the brain opens this. This is called apnea, hypopnea converting to apnea, and then at what level this happened, we have to see. Now, this velopharynx is a tube. Now, see, I am looking into the velopharynx. That was the upper part of the tube. This is the whole tube you are seeing. The velopharynx is not a two-dimensional structure. It's a tube. So you have to look into this tube and see what is the structure. This is the upper end of the tube, and as you go inside, you will see the whole tube. Okay. So now this is the lower end of the tube. That was the upper end of the tube. So this tube is contracting at what levels, in what form. Once you know what structure it is causing the collapse, that is called drug-induced sleep endoscopy. Now I'll just show you another drug-induced sleep endoscopy. This is how the patient. Are you getting the sound also?
Yes, sir.
You are getting my sound of the screen?
Yes, sir.
Snoring sound of the patient was coming to you?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay,
coming,
good.
sir.
Fine, fine. So see, now you're seeing the BIS monitor. Correct? So you're seeing what structure is moving in what direction. Now you can see base tongue in this case is not at fault. It's only the soft palate which is collapsing. Okay, I'll play it again. So upper part of the soft palate is fine. Lower part of the soft palate is collapsing. Now this is anterior. You can see the uvula here. So the base of the uvula is going behind. This is the tonsil, lower pole of the tonsil, and upper pole of the tonsil. So if I, now this is the vallecula. You can see the vallecula very well. Okay. So what was collapsing here? Again, see it. So this is the upper pole of the tonsil. This one is the upper pole of the tonsil. This is the lower pole of the tonsil. So upper pole of the tonsil and base of the uvula, they all come together. So what configuration is happening? This is, so what is actually happening inside, I'm trying to explain you by this animation, that the tonsil is moving medially upwards. And if you also look at from the side view, it is also moving behind. So these are the movements happening. Obviously, nobody is going to ask you what about these movements, because this is not there in any textbook or any journal. This is, I'm trying to explain you what happens, how these movements happen. So this is happening at the back here. And then you try to figure out what is the pattern of collapse. Now, what is important to understand is that when you look this patient, when the patient is swallowing, now this is swallowing, see what is happening. The upper part of the soft palate is going at the back and touching here for swallowing. So swallowing, if you look, swallowing happens from this part of the soft palate, and sleep apnea happens from this part of the soft palate. Now this is a very advanced information. So this is the reason we can operate on the lower part of the soft palate and still get out the patient out of sleep apnea, but his swallowing will not get affected. Therefore, you do not cut very high, you cut low and figure out what kind of collapse is there, and accordingly only tackle that part, right? So I will not get into this. I'll not get into this. This is actually a high information. Not
Because
really.
I think we need to
Yeah.
mention DICE.
Huh.
What is the dose of dexmedetomidine? Sometimes they may ask, I think. No?
So Dexmed, I think it was 1 microgram per kg that I had already shown.
1 milligram, microgram.
Microgram. Microgram, na? Milligram to bahut ho jayega.
Yes.
See, I'm not a great see 1 mcg per kg.
Yes, sir.
This is the routine dose. Midazolam is 0.3 to 0.5, and propofol up to 1 milligram per kg can be given. Yeah, you ask me all this because see, I am not a great exam teacher.
No, that's what, for them probably
Yeah.
they may ask all this.
I know. See, I am very good to explain the subject, but I am not a very great exam.
Sir, can you explain the lateral collapse
Because
and
I
concentric
think you
collapse?
need to mention about anteroposterior collapse and
Yeah,
lateral collapse.
I'm coming to this.
Yeah.
So that's why there were a lot of other things which I just passed.
Yes.
So now see, this is a collapse. Now, if you look at this collapse, where it is happening, this is anterior, this is posterior. Correct. So this is falling from anterior to posterior. Correct.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
So this is a clear-cut AP collapse. Antero-posterior collapse.
Yes.
Because you are seeing the palate going from anterior to posterior. You call it AP or antero-posterior collapse. On the other hand, this collapse, now this is anterior, this is posterior. So it's collapsing lateral to lateral. Now, if you follow this, actually, let me just go to the main part. So if you follow this, see, this is anterior, this is posterior, these are lateral. So collapse was happening lateral, right? This is a clear-cut lateral collapse. Very, very clearly seen. Or you want me to
Yes,
play it
sir.
again?
Clear, sir. It's
Clear,
clear,
sir.
sir.
Clear.
Perfect.
This is a clear-cut lateral collapse.
Yes, sir.
And if you follow it further, you can see that it was a lateral collapse. So this is a clear-cut lateral collapse. And if you have both AP and lateral, you can call it a circular collapse,
Yes, sir.
where both AP as well as lateral. So see, I can keep on telling you what happens here, what structure there, but there's no point giving too much of information because you are already loaded with so many things. So AP, lateral,
Vikas,
circular.
There's a question.
Hmm.
Anteroposterior collapse, they need to know what are the structures involved. Lateral collapse, what are the structures involved? I think there is a question from the audience.
Very nice. I actually wanted to speak that, लेकिन मुझे लगा ज़्यादा हो जाएगा तो मैंने बोला नहीं.
नहीं बोलना है.
So now see, now try to figure out what structure is there. So can anybody tell what is this structure where I'm pointing out right now? This is the base of the uvula, correct?
Yeah.
So base of the uvula, what you are seeing the base of the uvula from behind. So what structure can come next to base of uvula?
Yeah.
The posterior pillar.
Pillar.
The medial part of the posterior pillar. Sorry. Medial part of the posterior pillar.
Yes.
So what constitutes medial part of the posterior pillar? Posterior pillar is formed by palatopharyngeus muscle.
Yeah.
So base of the uvula and palatopharyngeus muscle, the medial part, right? This
Yes,
forms the AP collapse, medial part of the palatopharyngeal fold or the posterior pillar. And if you look at the lateral collapse.
Collapse.
Now, if you follow this
Yes.
collapse, this is the thing which is you can follow and see what is the structure here.
Lateral.
Now see, the tonsil is here, the uvula is here, and which part is collapsing? This is the medial part, this is the lateral part.
Hmm.
So this lateral part, so the vertical part, the lateral part of the posterior pillar forms the lateral collapse. So
Yes, sir.
palatopharyngeus muscle is like this. Ek minute, let me just make my. Are you able to see me also by any chance?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah,
Yes,
you
sir.
are also.
Okay, so see, the palatopharyngeus is like this. So the medial part, and this is the uvula, right?
Yes.
So the
yes.
uvula and the medial part of the palatopharyngeus or the posterior pillar forms the AP collapse. And the
Correct.
lateral part, this is the tonsil, the lateral part of the palatopharyngeus or the vertical part, that forms the lateral collapse. Now this forms AP and lateral. Now if AP and lateral both are combined, this is called circular. Easy?
Yeah.
Sir.
So part of the
Understood.
lateral pharyngeal wall and the vertical part of the palatopharyngeus. So lateral collapse, you straight away say lateral pharyngeal wall and vertical part of the palatopharyngeus. Because what will happen, most of your examiners will not really know so much of detail. So you say lateral pharyngeal wall collapses, and what it is made of, then you can say vertical part of palatopharyngeus. Because right, so don't try to get into too much of detail. You understand the subject, but say very, very clear things so that exam mein koi problem nahi aaye.
Yes, sir.
Right, what else? So the same in the oral pharyngeal wall. Again, I have also said here anterior part, posterior part. You don't say that. This is actually a presentation made for the World, World Sleep Forum. So oropharynx, you only have a lateral collapse. What classification? Velum, AP lateral circular, oropharyngeal lateral. Tongue base is, tongue base, you can say upper, lower, entire, we make it like this, but generally they say AP only because tongue does not collapse laterally. We see that also happening, but you can say AP collapse grade 0, 1, 2 and upper and lower. At the most, you do not need to know more than this. Right, this is a high tongue and low tongue. At the most, you can say high tongue base collapse and low tongue base collapse. And then AP incomplete or complete, that's it. Then coming to epiglottis collapse. So let me just show you the examples of everything. Since I've already told you, I'll just show you the example. So
Yes, sir.
upper base tongue, you have already seen. This is the upper base tongue collapse. Here you are not seeing the epiglottis. Here the upper part of the tongue is actually collapsing and you're not seeing the epiglottis. Then you can say it the high tongue base collapse. Correct? Because you're not seeing the epiglottis, you're not seeing the vallecula.
Yes, sir.
The high tongue is obscuring everything. Low tongue, when you are seeing the lower part of the tongue, you are seeing the tongue pressing onto the epiglottis. So this is a lower tongue base collapse. Very clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
And
for
then-
the students, they would ask,
Yeah.
what is the definition of vote classification, or what are the structures which is involved in vote classification?
Correct. So in vote classification, V is velum.
Velum.
Velum, we have already said AP lateral circular. Don't say high, low. Therefore, I have tried to omit it.
So velum
AP
is
lateral
AP lateral circular.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oropharynx is lateral only. Grade
Only
0, 1,
lateral,
2. 0
oropharynx.
means no collapse.
No
1 means
collapse.
partial collapse and 2 means complete collapse.
Fine.
T means tongue.
base.
Tongue is generally only collapsing AP generally.
Yes.
Only AP collapse. So you say 0, 1, 2 grade, no collapse, partial collapse and complete collapse
Yes.
of tongue.
Yes.
Right. In tongue, high and low at the most you can
Now we'll not confuse that. Tongue is only one, 0, 1, 2.
0, 1,
Tongue
2.
base. Yes.
And then
E
epiglottis.
is epiglottis.
E is epiglottis. Yes. So fine. Then I will not even go into this much of detail. This
Correct.
is lymphoid, muscular, high, low. I will not go into this much of detail also. Epiglottis. Again, primary we call it when epiglottis like is falling by itself. Secondary when it is being pressed by the tongue.
Yes.
Even that is a little high.
Primary epiglottic collapse and secondary epiglottic
Yeah,
collapse.
primary when the epiglottis is falling by itself. Secondary when it
Itself.
is compressed by the tongue.
Tongue.
Done?
Sir,
I think this
what
is
is the
sim-
what is the most common type of collapse you see in velum, sir?
So generally people would say AP.
AP collapse. Yeah.
Of late, they have been talking about lateral. In India, we see a lot of lateral collapse. And
Yes, sir.
if you ask me, the commonest I see is a circular collapse.
Okay, sir. Yes.
In
Yeah, but-
severe obstructive sleep apnea, it is most oftenly is a circular collapse. Yeah.
because everything is collapsing.
Yes.
But you can say it is either AP or lateral. Commonest is still AP. You are safe saying that
Yes.
because UPPP was developed on AP collapse only.
On AP collapse.
Yeah.
Yes. Sir,
What
can you
next?
please explain at least 2-3 surgeries which are very famous, and just revise us the steps little bit, sir. 2 minutes, three
No,
3
so
minutes. Sir.
tonsillectomy, adenoidectomy in pediatric age group.
No, sir. UPPP, lateral pharyngoplasty and all.
Okay, so I think for exam purpose, Dhanraj, why don't you tell them? I
No. See,
generally,
actually,
I will get
yeah.
into the concept part of it. You
Yes.
tell them
No,
about the exam.
UPPP is ulopalatopharyngoplasty, okay, which was actually done earlier. Now there are a lot of modifications like zetaplasty, uh, anterior palatoplasty and all those things. Because initially, for all the cases, they used to do UPPP, okay, for whether it is lateral collapse, anteroposterior collapse, circular collapse, everything. But now, to be very specific, that is outdated. Now, for AP collapse, anteropalatoplasty, for lateral collapse,
Expansion or lateral
expansion
pharyngoplasty.
sphincteroplasty, and circumferential collapse, there are again many procedures. I think what you need to do is you need to know is zetaplasty. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Because
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
for exam purpose, very basics.
yes,
Yes, sir.
only
So-
this much. Don't get into that barbed,
Yeah.
pharyngoplasty
Yes, sir.
and all those things. Only these things: anterior collapse, anterior
See,
palatoplasty.
majority of the times you can say that for different types of collapses, different types of palatopharyngoplasty
Yes.
surgeries are
done.
done depending on the choice of the surgeon.
Yes,
Simple.
Okay, sir.
simple.
but
I think Prateek, see,
Yes, sir.
to be very honest, because now most of the surgeons would know about these types of collapse.
Yeah.
So it is better to say surgical procedures if they ask, sir, based on the type of collapse of the at the velum level, there are different procedures. If it is an anterior posterior collapse, anterior palatoplasty.
Palatoplasty, simple.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Lateral collapse, expansion sphincteroplasty, and for circumferential collapse, zeta.
Simple.
So then
This much
they
is
will
enough.
not ask about ulopalatopharyngoplasty at all. These are all modified.
Correct.
Sir, actually, we get the questions like what is UPPP or what is zetaplasty? This is a most common question in sleep.
Okay.
So how to write for
Because
that
I think
in
you
2 lines?
do you have a video of
Yeah.
sphincteroplasty? Yeah.
I'll just share my screen.
So can you just explain these 3-4 surgeries?
Yeah.
So that we can write for 2 lines at least.
So let me just go to see, what are you seeing right now? Yeah, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Sir, presentation, yes.
So basically, see, in palatal surgery, what do? First of all, you do tonsillectomy because tonsil, the moment you remove, your anterior pillar and posterior pillar will come closer. Posterior pillar is the culprit of, sleep apnea. So you want to take the posterior pillar in front. And if uvula is the culprit, you want to remove the uvula. So uvulopalatopharyngoplasty, the classical variety, uvula is removed. In the modified ones, many times uvula is not removed. Nowadays, uvula preservation is actually being taught as the main procedure. So anyway, you remove the tonsils. Why is this not working? So after removing the tonsil, oh, sorry, this is actually my technique, Bob. No, I'll not speak about this. So what is finally done is you don't look at this barbed. This will be too confusing. So what you do, you remove the uvula, you remove the tonsils, and you suture anterior and posterior pillars together. This is a classical uvulopalatopharyngoplasty. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is the way they have to say,
Correct.
Dhanraj.
Yes. Uvulopalatopharyngoplasty, removal of uvula, tonsils, and suturing of the posterior to anterior pillar.
Anterior pillar. This is the classical uvulopalatopharyngoplasty.
Palatopharyngoplasty.
The modifications, anterior palatoplasty, you suture you take the palate in front anteriorly. So in this, you make sutures on the anterior surface of the soft palate to pull it more anterior in one line. Correct, Dhanraj?
Yes, yes.
One line. Anterior palatoplasty, it is falling AP, so you pull it more anterior by putting sutures anteriorly. Lateral pharyngoplasty, you put sutures laterally so that the whole pharynx is pulled laterally.
Yes.
And in Zeta, you open it both in AP as well as lateral dimensions
Lateral.
by making a butterfly. One word you remember, a butterfly flap.
Butterfly flap.
Simple. More than this, I don't think they will be asking.
Yes. So what is modified expansion sphincter pharyngoplasty?
So that's what. So expansion pharyngoplasty again gives both AP as well as lateral. So in that, they pull up the palatopharyngeus muscle superiorly.
Suture it to the hamulus.
Pterygoid hamulus.
Pterygoid hamulus.
Yes.
So, Pratik, see,
Yes, sir.
what happens is the tonsils have been removed. Okay. The palatopharyngeus muscle, that is a pussy pillar, okay, is sutured, and a suture is brought to the pterygoid hamulus so that the palatopharyngeus muscle is pulled upwards and laterally.
Yes, sir.
That's it. More than that, see, without explaining things, you'll not remember anything.
Yes.
So you just remember the one line just to give your answers.
Yes, sir.
What else? You wanted to know about coblation technology, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, sir.
So yeah, so that I can explain in detail. So let me go to coblation town. So what is coblation technology? I will straight away come to the coblation technology. One sec. So coblation technology is actually based on radio frequency. The radio frequency forms the plasma. What is plasma? Plasma is the fourth state of matter, which is generated by an electrical field which is created between the active and the passive electrodes. So radio frequency energy converts saline into plasma. This is
Yes,
that plasma is the fourth state of matter. That means solid, liquid, gas, and ionized gas. And this ionized gas has very highly charged particles. They disintegrate the tissue straight away into hydrogen, carbon, oxygen like elements, right? So this excited plasma will, with the sodium chloride, this will form the plasma vapor, right? And this will break down the tissue and ablate it straight away into hydrogen, oxygen, and the the elements that it is formed of. So it's a low intensity current, and it removes the tissues precisely. It removes, therefore it's called wand, because the tissue is not burnt, it's completely evaporated, not by temperature. By at a very low temperature between 40 to 60 degree or 60 to 70 degree, the whole tissue is actually ablated. So there are two settings. One is ablation, one is coagulation. So ablation is for complete removal of tissue, and coagulation is for coagulation of the blood vessels. So coagulation is much similar to cautery or radio frequency, but it is much gentler than the ablation, what you call cautery. So it does at a lower temperature. So this is about coblation. Now you can see that the coagulation which happens, this actually does not go deeper into the tissues. So when you are operating, you remove the tissues without burning, and whatever area is actually bleeding, you can go there and coagulate again without burning. So there's no charring of tissues. So you have a controlled ablation with hemostasis without any charring of tissues. So this is about coblation, controlled ablation. You also call it cold ablation, right? So I'll just show you video so that you can understand how it works. So you pull the tonsil, and then with the coblation wand, you keep on melting tissue. So this is not a tissue burning technology. This is not a tissue cutting technology. This is a tissue melting technology, right? So in one word, if you have to say, it's a melting technology, controlled ablation without high temperature. Therefore, the pain is less and hemostasis is better. And this is what this is all about.
What are the disadvantages of coblation?
If we have to write like 3-4 points.
Cost is the first thing, because each wand is a disposable wand, so the cost is very high, around 10 to 12,000 for each wand. It is supposed to be.
Because cost doesn't come under disadvantage.
I know. लेकिन इंडिया में तो यही एक disadvantage है. Learning curve is high.
Yes, sir.
And then see, because if you do not, if you give too little irrigation, then there's a problem. If you give too much of irrigation, then there's a problem. If you give too little suction, there's a problem. If you give too much of suction, there's a problem.
Is there a possibility of a secondary hemorrhage?
Yeah, so that's what. If you are not very well versed with coblation, then the possibility of secondary hemorrhage is also more. Once you are well versed with coblation, then the secondary hemorrhage is absolutely not more. But generally, this is said as one of the disadvantages, because people are generally not very well versed with coblation. Once you are well versed, then it's not a problem at all.
Okay.
Pratik,
yes,
Pratik, one more this thing.
Somebody is writing pain. Pain is actually, once your hands are set, then it's absolutely a painless surgery. But if you are not into the correct plane, if you're going to the muscles, then it is equally painful. But otherwise, it's a painless and bloodless procedure. Duration of surgery. So tonsillectomy, each side would take around 2 to 3 minutes once your hands are set. Otherwise, you can take an hour also. Adenoidectomy generally takes around 15 minutes. Uvulopalatopharyngoplasty around 30 minutes. Base tongue surgery again between 15 to 30 minutes, common ones. Placenta podial, yeah.
Sir, what about after doing the OSA surgeries? What about the post-op procedures? So how to take care of the patient? What is the stay in ICU?
Correct. So generally, sleep apnea surgery is done on patients whose airway is already, compromised. So as a thumb rule, if you have to say, it should be done in a setting of where ICU is there and high dependency unit is there, and every patient should be kept in the ICU. But if you're doing a simple palate surgery, if the tongue base is not large, then generally patient would not have a problem if you have done the surgery correctly. So you can do it as a daycare as well. But in the exam, you are absolutely safe saying that the patient is always admitted at least in the ward for a day or two, and if required, kept in the ICU for overnight. You will be more safe in saying so rather than, and the pain is there, chances of bleeding is there.
Rebleed
Is also there. So as your experience will grow, obviously these things will become less. But initially when somebody is doing, these factors are there. And therefore the patient has to be from the same city. Generally you do not do and send the patient to a different city and take it seriously. It should be done by an experienced surgeon in a proper setup with ICU care, good anesthetist who can understand how to intubate and not intubate, and take it very, very seriously. This is how the exam you have to answer.
Usually, Pratik, if the examiner asks that question of post-op care,
yes, sir.
When there's a tongue-based surgery done, so the first thing is ICU care. The patient needs to be in ICU. Also mention about the intubation. I mean, a patient need not be extubated. So these are all the things which the examiner would expect. ICU, patient to be intubated for that overnight. And
base tongue, it's very, very safe to say that keep the patient intubated or do a tracheostomy.
Yes.
Yes.
Soft
that was
palate.
The next question I was coming to.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And also, Pratik, one more question which examiners would want to ask.
Yes.
In the classical UPPP, the most commonest complication,
yes,
VPI, viropharyngeal insufficiency.
Correct.
Why was it caused? See, normally if we do nowadays we do a lot of modified UPPP, there is no VPIs. Why VPI was caused? Because that was the one which led to the failure of that UPPP.
Correct.
Yeah. So as Vikas said, basically the surgeries is done on the lower structures of the palate, not on the higher structures. Higher structure is the one which is involved in swallowing, I don't know whether you made a note of it when he was mentioning.
Yes, sir, we made.
So
Sir.
when the surgery involves the higher structure of the palate, then the swallowing problem starts. That is when BPI is.
Yes, sir. Because
Somebody is
sir,
asking to show this slide again. I'm just showing
Yes,
that
sir.
slide again. Yeah.
sir, you also said previously, like there is a dimple we have to identify, and we have to below the dimple.
Correct. So when
Correct.
you, okay, let me first just finish with this slide. I'll come to that. So
Yes.
if you give too little irrigation, then the electrical path is not complete. So the wand will not be able to function well, and there'll be clogging of the wand because the material will not be completely uh, uh, ablated. So it will get into the suction channel and there'll be clogging of the wand. If you're giving too much of irrigation, then too much of irrigation, there'll be pooling of saline. So the electrical impulse will, get conducted to the surrounding tissues and will again impede with the electrical path. So too much of irrigation is also not good. If the suction is too less, again, suction is not working well. So there'll be pooling of saline as well as clogging of the wand. And if the suction is very high, then the plasma will get extinguished before working only. So this is the balance. This is the most important slide actually for learning coblation. But obviously you understand that in 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it's very difficult to, give knowledge and prepare for exam.
No, for them, for them,
For exam.
that one sentences in each question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I know. Exam preparation is totally different. Minimum age coblation is helpful. What about post-op abdomen coblation at adenoidectomy in small children? Fine. So see, minimum age that I have performed coblation is 1.5, but I would say that in exam, be very safe. Say that 4 to 5 years for adenoid surgery is, is generally the age. People should not operate below that age, right? 4 to 5 years is a very safe thing. You can say that 4 to 5 years is the generally age for adenoid surgery with any method. However, in experienced hands with coblation, it can be done at a younger age also. That's it. Nothing more. Barabar?
Yes, sir.
Yes, don't mention about the age.
4 to 5 years is the acceptable thing. You say that should not be done before that. And if he say why with coblation there is no bleeding, then you can always say, sir, in experienced hand it can be done. But
that's why I said no. Read the mind of the examiner before you answer that.
So always put it. See, if you say experienced people can do, I am not going to do when I get out of this exam. Then you are safe. Then you will pass. What about post-op edema and coblation and adenoidectomy in smaller children? So coblation does not give any edema. So there will be no edema in coblation and adenoidectomy. Any cutoff age when it should be avoided. So as I said, for exam purposes, less than 4 to 5 years, you say that it should be avoided. And it should be done generally when the child is at least 10, 12 kg and more of weight, and 4 to 5 years at least of age. Generally, this is your answer. However, we do it at any age. 1 year, 1.5 year, we do it at any age. But this is not your exam answer.
Sir, that dimple, sir.
Okay. Okay. So when you open your mouth and say ah, then you will see that the soft palate is going and touching at the back.
Yes, sir.
I showed it to you from inside. Then when the person is swallowing, you saw that the soft palate is going and touching at the back.
Yes, sir.
So when you say ah and you see the soft palate going and touching at the back, that place is dimple. That is the area where levator palati is functioning. I'll just try to explain you. Give me a moment. That is something which I am very, very fond of showing. The action of the muscles.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I have to share this screen first. So now this is about the size of the tonsil. Let me come to the next one. Oh God. So these are the muscles: levator palati, tensor palati, palatoglossus and palatopharyngeus, and musculus uvuli. Now this is the action of the tensor palati. This is making the palate tense. So obviously this has no role in sleep apnea, but when the palate is lifted and tensed, then the swallowing happens. So tensor palati is to tense the palate. The principal action in swallowing is of levator palati. So levator palati will pull the palate behind and superior. So wherever it will go and touch. This is the action of the levator palatii, and that's where you will see the dimple. This is the most important muscle for swallowing and speech. If my levator palatii is not functioning, my speech will become like this, right? I will not be able to use my palate. So this is the anterior pillar action, and this is the posterior pillar action. So that was the levator palatii. So
Yes, sir. Sir, one very important and new question, sir.
Yeah.
Since it is a COVID era, so how to modify our examination part, how to modify our approach to the patient. So can you please throw some light on that, sir?
so no surgery, no sleep apnea surgery, no elective surgery, no non-emergency surgery of ENT in the COVID era. That is the guideline.
Sir, regarding examination for OSA.
I know. So you said approach. So
Yes,
first
sir.
of all, surgery is out. Then when you're examining the patient, if you have to examine the nose and the throat, how you will examine the throat without depressing the tongue? You can possibly put a mask, make a hole in that, and put a scope and examine through that. Otherwise, we are full PPE, face shield and everything, and then gently ask the patient to say ah, and do not depress the tongue deep inside. If you depress the tongue, patient will. So you have to be more careful and use a scope. Put a mask, make a small hole, put the scope inside that, and see the inside part. But more than that,
yes,
I really do not know.
Sir, can you please,
It's risky.
in 2 minutes,
Dhanraj, you will like to add anything? Are you practicing, Dhanraj?
Yes, because I've not stopped.
Bombay is
That's why I
bad.
did what.
Okay.
No.
Now you tell.
Yeah, I know Bombay is bad. We are last 2-3 days we're experiencing the same thing, same wave in Bangalore also.
So how you have been taking precaution if they have to?
See, one is the personal protection, complete personal protection, visor and gloves. I wear a half mask, respirator mask. And when the patient comes, one is I have made sure that my endoscope goes only into the ear, not into the nose and throat.
So how do you examine the nose and the throat?
Nose and the throat only with a light source. Yes.
Only with the light. You do not put a tongue depressor.
I don't use a tongue depressor.
So whatever you can see, so you compromise.
Whatever you can see.
Understood.
Yes. The compromised examination definitely.
Understood.
Yeah, even nose also. So basically, most of it goes the history way.
Understood.
Yeah. Surgery wise, honestly, I've not done any elective surgeries, but I had got a sphenoid and mucosal bleed and
naturally.
Emergencies only.
I think that's fine. What else, Pratik?
Sir, one last question, sir. Can you please tell us in few words about transoral robotic surgery? Can you show us few slides?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, let me just...
What are the advantages of TORS? What are the disadvantages? Just 2 lines.
Yeah. Just try to figure out. Okay. I'll share my screen again. So what is a robot? This is the Da Vinci system. So robot has got arms which go inside the patient, and there's a console on which you can sit and play it like a joystick, right? Now what is the advantage? That the arms can turn at 360 degrees, they can turn, which your hands cannot. So with the robotic arms, you can, this is the setup, this is the anesthetist, this is the patient already docked with the robot. This is the bedside surgeon.
Yeah.
And this the actual surgeon is sitting on the console. This is the bedside assistant surgeon, right? So these are the arms which go inside the head. Sorry. And then this is how you operate.
It's a pretty big thing. So
Now you see the robotic arms, you are controlling them as a joystick, and then
At the same time, I
majorly
have to remember that laterally
it
the
is
vessels
used
are a
mainly
little
for the base
closer.
of the tongue.
So
So you keep on cutting, just like depth of the cavity, it's like you are using the cautery or whatever laser, whatever you're using. So it will give you a 3D HD vision and a very controlled movement of the arms.
so
Unfortunately, this all slides are playing complete, so I have to fast forward. Right, so you go into the depth and you have a very, very fine control. And you can
time
actually
itself is
rotate
more.
the arm also if required. See how much of tissue you can actually see. You are sitting on the console.
Okay.
Now, the real advantage why this was developed is that if you can do this in the same room or from a different room, you can also do it from,
Now,
US.
whether I should go here or not,
Right
that I have
now,
to
see, we
decide.
are in different cities of India and talking in real
So
time.
let me
So once the
reorient.
internet is so fast that you can control the robot from
Okay.
overseas over the internet, you can actually do that also. So this is robotic
Okay,
surgery.
this patient we have to do.
So you can go into the depth and do a more precise surgery using both your hands, using HD vision, and this is about robotic surgery. I don't think more than that will be required.
Sir, what operations can we do by using this robotic surgery? Transoral.
So cancers in the throat,
Yes, sir.
deeper cancers for which you have to otherwise do a mandibular split.
Yes, sir.
You can do supraglottal, supralaryngeal,
Hmm.
and you can do base of the tongue for sleep apnea. You can also do radical tonsillectomy.
Yes, sir.
For CA tonsils.
And sir, what are the two disadvantages, two or three main disadvantages?
Main disadvantage is the cost. The robot is around 15 crores.
Ah,
15
and
crores
sir,
the equipment cost. सबसे बड़ा तो disadvantage वही है.
yes, sir.
इसलिए availability कम है, per surgery के equipment cost भी काफी है.
Yes, sir.
So it adds
Actually,
to,
Pratik, surgical disadvantages are none.
yeah.
Yes, sir. But sir,
time लगता है basically. You have to dock the robot,
Setup.
learning, setup, and there's a question, what is the indication of radical tonsillectomy? So cancer of the tonsil, you do a standard tonsillectomy for infected tonsil. For cancer of the tonsil, you do radical tonsillectomy where you remove the tonsil, the pillars, and go laterally as much as you can till you get a clear field. That's called radical tonsillectomy.
Sir, Dr. Prashanta has also asked about harmonic scalpel. Can you just in one?
So harmonic scalpel works on ultrasound. So you had coblation which works on radio frequency splitting water into the
Ions.
plasma. Yes.
Plasma ions.
And here ultrasound, the sound waves are used to create cutting effect. That's called harmonic scalpel.
Yes, sir.
More than that, and the harmonic scalpel also has a very good coagulation because the tissues, the protein inside the tissues is actually coagulated by the sound waves.
Yes, sir.
This is in simple the principle of space in OT, tactile sensation, other disadvantages.
Yes, sir. So they are preparing very well, sir. All the students.
Yeah.
So
no, I do not, Prasanta, I do not use harmonic scalpel, so I do not have any videos of harmonic scalpel.
Yes, sir. So I think, sir, it was a very good session, sir, and thank you so much for coming.
You're most welcome anytime.
Yes, sir.
बस ये है कि मतलब see, it's more than 20 years I have passed, so and I am not in a teaching institute.
Sir,
So I love to explain the concept and the understanding, but not one two line answer. I'm not used to
sir,
that kind of teaching.
Sir, actually, the questions on sleep are increasing since the last 5 years. जब से आपने करना शुरू किया है ना, उसके बाद से हमारे में क्वेश्चन बढ़ गए.
मुसीबत हो गई.
So that's why. So, sir,
no. Actually, Pratik, what can be done is whatever you want, you can answer in this thing and blame it on Vikas.
No, sir. Yes, sir. I think we can call it a night, sir. And thank you so much for coming, sir.
Most welcome.
Yes, sir.
Most
Thank you,
welcome.
Dhanraj, sir. Thank you, Vikas, sir.
Most
Thank
welcome.
you, Sri Harsha Tikka. Thank you, Bhargav boss. And thank you, all the members. So, we are a team of DNB mentors, sir, actually.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
we are just encouraging students जो अभी कोविड की वजह से they are not going to the clinics or they are doing
Very
COVID
nice.
duties.
Very nice. Very
So
nice.
normally we used to go to attend OSCEs like in Murph, like in
Yeah.
Pune,
Yeah.
various
Yeah.
places. But abhi we
Yeah.
cannot travel, so that's why we
Yeah.
have arranged these sessions, sir.
No, it's a good, good initiation, Pratik.
Yes.
We also had a learning phase. Last one day I was also thinking, sitting and studying about the definitions of API. Because
So yes, sir.
good,
नहीं,
Pratik. Carry
those-
on this.
नहीं, at least those definitions तो किताब में मिल जाती है, लेकिन ये इतना actually see when you
Yes,
if you ask me, for me it's see, for you it is you have to know one line.
correct.
I cannot finish in
I
I know,
know.
I know it's difficult.
Yes,
No,
मेरे लिए
it's a
बहुत
good
मुश्किल हो जाता
attempt
है.
made by them.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
least
No,
one or
no.
two points if they carry on from each
Yes, yes,
webinar.
yes,
That's a
yes,
good.
yes.
That is what we learn in conferences also. No?
Yeah.
In a conference, you
sir,
don't
sir.
take everything. You just
Yeah,
take
yeah.
one or 2 points to your practice.
Correct.
Correct, sir. And by this webinar, they can also talk to Vikas sir and Dhanraj sir.
Nee,
So that-
anytime.
So
Whenever you want me to join again, I'm absolutely ready. I have no problems.
yes, sir. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Bye,
It
sir.
was nice to see you, Dhanraj.
Right. Nice because
नहीं,
after a
प्रतीक
long
प्रतीक
time.
अपना प्रतीक अपना शक्ल तो दिखा, तुमने तो कोई फोटो लगा रखी है खाली तब से.
1 minute, sir.
Pratik and Harshita are with us, Vikas, here in
हाँ
Bangalore.
हाँ.
So,
अच्छा, okay. They're in
हाँ.
Bangalore, okay.
Yes, sir.
Harshita works
Oh.
with me and Pratik
Okay.
also. We
Oh,
तो
प्रतीक
आपका
थोड़ा
join
मोटा हो
ये-
गया अभी.
Yes, sir.
No, we actually क्या हुआ है because we have joined Pratik and Harshita's team now.
Okay. You joined. Very nice. Good. But I used to have very nice time. I used to go to TMH, na Tata Men Hospital.
Sir, Jamshedpur, we have met so
Jamshedpur
many
में
times.
कई बार 3-4 बार मैं चला गया.
हाँ, yes, sir.
और 2-2 3-3 दिन रह के आता था तुम्हारा बहुत.
Yes, sir. So
Chalo.
that Nana Patekar also was, yes, sir.
What Nana Patekar?
Sir, you only told me na that that Nana Patekar was very good. वो जो stand up किया था, sir.
हाँ.
Yes, sir.
Stand
So
up,
you
right.
told me that Nana Patekar was very good. Others में तेरे को improve करना है.
I know.
Yes, sir.
Chalo, great.
Yes, sir.
Good
Thank
night,
you, sir.
everybody. Good night.
Right.
It was very
Right,
nice
because
meeting
nice
you.
Bye,
talking
bye,
to you.
bye,
Yeah.
bye,
Bye,
sir.
Pratik.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.